All right. And good day, and welcome to today's session of Truly Foundation and A Course in Miracle. Hi, my name is Oliver. As usual, I am your temporary host, your temporary guide, your temporary coach. And I'm delighted, I'm excited to be here with you in this space where we share transformation. We share a whole lot of love. And most importantly, we share the truth that we believe that is true always, as it has been downloaded to us in this very special way, in this very special form called A Course in Miracles. It is not the only way, it is not the only download, but it's the one that has resonated with me to the point where I cannot but share. I cannot but extend, because this is a love course to us from the author of creation himself. And it is, like we said, in the practicing of these ideas, it's in the practicing of these God thoughts that we come to realize that they are true. They are universally true. And so I have made an irrevocable decision because I understand that I have a self-interest. I have an equal interest in all humanity. And because I see that my self-interest is the same as yours, I freely choose. I freely volunteer to be a teacher of this truth. And I'm so happy that I made that decision. And I hope that my decision is a decision that elevates you. It's a decision that helps to transform you by the renewing of your mind, so that you come into full awareness of who you are and your relationship with your creator and your relationship with me and all humanity, your relationship to this experience that we call life here in this perceptual world. I'm so happy that we're on this journey together. And today we're going to be turning one page forward, and we're going to be looking at workbook lesson 249. Yeah, we're moving right on down the road. Eventually we're going to be less than 100 lessons that we will have to complete. We started this journey on January 10th, 2022, and I don't want the journey to end. But as the course says, this is just the beginning. This is not an end, but this is a course. It's a course in miracles. It's a course in mind training. It's a course in mind reversal. It's a course in healing. It's a course in true perception. There's many things that we can say about the Course in Miracles and its purpose and its capacity to help anyone to rise up out of a place of sin consciousness, guilt, and fear, and elevate us into that which is always present. And as we go through this course, understand the course, apply the principles of the course, apply the ideas, apply the thoughts, the results cannot be anything else. But a shift from fear to freedom, from fear to love, from ego thought system to the thought system of God. We are transitioning from a mind of limitation to the mind of Christ, where there is no limits. We are translating from a belief in death and lack and scarcity to a knowing that all things remain as they were created, including you and me. And so today's idea turns again to the subject of forgiveness. Forgiveness is one of the major themes in A Course in Miracles. In fact, it is the means by which the Course says that we make the transition. It's almost like forgiveness is like a bridge that we have to cross. There's no other way to the other side but through forgiveness. There's no way to your release from suffering other than the simplicity of forgiveness, and not the forgiveness that we've been taught in religion, not the forgiveness that we've been taught by the world, but we're talking about the Course kind of forgiveness. It's the kind of forgiveness that Jesus demonstrated. It's the kind of forgiveness that you have to come to the realization of what is real and what is not. And when we discover what is real, it's easy to forgive, or it's easy to let go of that which we've been holding on to, that has been the catalyst to our suffering, to our fear, to our guilt, to our pain, to our sense of separation, our sense of a poor self-image of ourselves, our sense of inferiority. All this comes from holding unforgiving thoughts, holding on to the idea of separation. So this course is a course in forgiveness. You can't get away from forgiveness. Why? It is the highest virtue outside of heaven. It is the highest virtue outside of perfection. God in his wisdom has taken an imperfect concept like forgiveness and have made it a perfect means by which we release ourselves from an unreal and an unperfect world. God in his wisdom. The difference between forgiveness and all other temporary concepts is that forgiveness brings us to this door of reality. It brings us to the door of heaven. It returns us home to the door where our Father, our Creator, makes the final step and welcome us in. So you cannot avoid what the Course calls true forgiveness. You cannot avoid it. If you think that you can engage in forgiveness against anyone or anything and know yourself, you're mistaken. If you think you can engage in any level of forgiveness, of unforgiveness, and know your Creator, it's not possible. If you think that you can engage in any level of holding grievances against your fellow humanity, regardless of what has happened, it doesn't matter. From the most simple to the greatest the most heinous thing. The Course says there's no order of difficulty in forgiveness. It takes the same forgiveness, the same reality, that true forgiveness, that in reality, nothing has happened. And so here we are again, expanding our awareness on the subject of forgiveness. Forgiveness is in every major religion. The idea as it is shared and demonstrated here in the course takes forgiveness to the ultimate. There are a lot of religions that play around with forgiveness. There are a lot of us that just play around with forgiveness. But when we truly embrace the course's brand of forgiveness, when we truly demonstrate Jesus's brand of brand of forgiveness, we find ourselves standing at the threshold of a new beginning, the threshold of freedom that we've never known. And God takes the final step. Isn't that simple? Isn't that easy? So let's see what it says. So the idea for today is forgiveness ends. Forgiveness ends. Forgiveness doesn't begin. Unforgiveness begins. It begins an experience that you don't want to have. It began thought patterns that you don't want to have. It began feelings that you don't want to engage in. It began suffering and pain that you do not want. So unforgiveness begins, but forgiveness, it ends. It ends. It ends the pain and the suffering. It ends the bad feelings and the emotion. It ends the insanity of separation. It ends all illusions. Forgiveness does. It's powerful. Jesus said it is the greatest thing outside of reality. But God uses this to bring us face to face with reality. Isn't that something? How deep is the wisdom of God? It is, the Bible said, it is past finding out. It is unsearchable in his ways. Oh, the height and the depth of the wisdom of God. When he uses a what we think is a simple process or a simple concept like forgiveness to bring us back home. Oh my goodness. So forgiveness ends. It is the end. When we engage in forgiveness, it is the end of an idea. It is the end of a thought. And so forgiveness ends all suffering. That's not what it says here. It says forgiveness ends all suffering. That means that none is excluded. Therefore, if there's any level of suffering that you are experiencing or anyone's experiencing, it says true forgiveness ends that. It ends it all. It says forgiveness ends all suffering. And not only suffering, it said forgiveness ends all loss, or the idea of loss, or the idea of suffering, because suffering is an idea that comes with the belief in separation, that comes with the belief that in inequality, that comes with the belief in a personal self. To believe in a personal self, the self that we made, the ego self that we made, this personality, this personal self. It ends all suffering in that personal self. Because who we really are, the I am, there is no suffering. We just talked about that on yesterday, that whatever suffers is not a part of the real me. So here we're talking about that forgiveness ends all suffering and loss. Where? In this personal self that we have made. So there is no suffering and there is no loss in the real you, because the real you is love. It is about this personal ego self that we have made with the personality. Thinking that we're separate from God and separate from each other. Seeking to make something of ourselves that we're not. That is what suffers. That is what appeared to have loss. Because in God, what God created, there is no suffering and there is no loss. The real you, there is no suffering. The real you, there is no loss. The infinite you, the self-aware you, the impersonal you, there is no suffering and there is no loss. That awakened state of mind, it cannot be affected at all. What's affected is this mind that we have joined with that appears to be split off from the one mind of God and doing its own thing, creating its own world, making its own laws, making its own way, and promoting it as what? As a substitute for reality. And we have all bought into that. We've all been conditioned by that way. There is love and there is nothing else. If there's any other way that is parading itself as the truth, it's not love and it's not God and it's not the real you. And so forgiveness ends all suffering and loss. That is our thought and idea for today. Wow, just like that? I mean, that's it? You mean I can extricate myself from all suffering and pain through forgiveness? Absolutely. God set it up that way. That is God's way. That is God's plan for salvation. There's no other way. It has nothing to do with your belief or unbelief. It has nothing to do with your practices, your rituals. It has nothing to do with what you do with your money or don't do with your money. It has nothing to do. Your salvation has nothing to do with any earthly thing. Nothing to do with any system that we have made up and put a label on it, a religious label, and say, this is the way. It has nothing to do with any of that. In reality, it has nothing to do with your elder brother. It has all to do with you and who you say that you are. It all has to do with you embracing for yourself the reality of your oneness with God and with all humanity. That's all it has to do with. And you're only a decision away from changing the entire landscape of your existence here. One decision away, one reality away. God placed it in you. Didn't place it out there. He didn't even place it in me for you. He placed it out. He placed it in you. But when he placed it in you, he did place it in me, because there's you and I are one. There's only one of us. I can look at 8 billion people on the planet now that I understand, now that I've awakened to the truth, and I only see one. He calls it the body. He calls it Christ. He calls it the I am. It's just 8 billion expressions of the one I am. But we're all one. We're not separate. We're each other's brothers and sisters. We're each other's love mates. That's the true perception that comes from transformation, that comes from renewing our mind and embracing only the mind of Christ. So it says forgiveness ends all suffering. So before we move through the lesson, let's go back and remind ourselves what the Course says about forgiveness. Let's see what the Course said about forgiveness. It on page 401 in the workbook for student section. on page 401 in the workbook for students section of A Course in Miracles. This whole page is dedicated to helping us to understand the Course's brand of forgiveness, or Jesus's brand of forgiveness. Jesus demonstrated the Course's brand of forgiveness in his life. He did. I mean, he walked it out perfectly. He is our model. He is our example for true forgiveness. To understand true forgiveness, if you're going to use the Bible, just look at the life of Christ. Look at the life of Jesus. You don't have to look any further. You don't have to read back or read forward. Just look at Jesus modeled true forgiveness. If you look any other place there, beside that, forgiveness is going to be watered down. But Jesus did not water down forgiveness. He drank it straight. Jesus drank his forgiveness straight. He demonstrated it straight. All other sections of those 66 books, it's watered down in some degree because it was man's experience of what his understanding of forgiveness was, which was based on what? Separation. So you cannot look at that and get to the ultimate of what forgiveness is. You have to look at Jesus' demonstration of what true forgiveness is. And he went to one of the most extreme ordeals in order to demonstrate what forgiveness is. When he was in what you would think his most justifiable position to hold a grievance against a people, a religion, a world, when he was in most vulnerable position, when he could absolutely do nothing in the natural to reverse his position of being unfairly treated. What did he do? What did he do? What did he do? It's not only what he did, it's what he said. It's not only what he said, but what he did. He did not resist the unreal accusations. He did not resist it. But ultimately he said, Father. Notice now, he said, Father. So he was calling on the fatherhood of God. He was calling on that which was true, that which was real. He said, Father, or reality, truth. He said, what? I forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. He said, I release them, for they know not what they're doing. He said, it's even though they haven't done anything. I bring no charge to them. They are acting out of their own ignorance. They're acting out of their own insanity. They're acting out of their own fear. They're acting out of their own belief in separation. And so what? He said, I forgive them. He said, as though they've done nothing. Nowhere in the annals of reality that there's a charge against anyone where Jesus is concerned. Everyone was free and innocent and whole and complete. Even though they didn't know it, but that's what he knew about them. That's what he came to share with them. And for his coming and for his sharing that, they was afraid of the truth. They was afraid of the light. And so they tried to put the light out by destroying a body, not knowing that Jesus is not a body. He knew who he was. Likewise, you are not a body. You may know or you may not know, but I'm here to tell you, you are not a body. To destroy the body is not to destroy you, for the body to be laid down because you are finished with it. It is not to destroy you. It doesn't end your reality. It doesn't end your existence. You are an infinite, eternal, self-aware, impersonal being. In fact, you are the same being that God is. You are the same life that God is, the same love that God is, the same self that God is. Yes, you are. When we embrace that, like it says here, the suffering and the loss no longer exist for you, like it didn't exist for Jesus. We think Jesus suffered on the cross. Jesus didn't suffer. When I say Jesus, the I am Christ, no. The body has no feeling of its own. The body has no mind of its own. I know you're saying, Oliver, you are really getting out there, boy. And I am. That's what they told Jesus. You're getting out there. You're getting like, you're getting beside yourself. And Jesus said, come go with me, follow me. So I said, come and follow me. No, don't follow me. You follow. Don't even follow the yellow brick road. But you follow the truth that is true always. And so today's truth is that forgiveness recognizes. See, one can forgive like Jesus when they recognize something. Otherwise, you can't forgive like Jesus. It says, forgiveness recognizes what we thought our brother did to us, or our sister did to us, or what the world did to us, or what the government did to us, or what school did to us, or our family did to us, or our neighbors did to us, or other countries did to us, or other races did to us, or other genders did to us. What we thought was done to us that was unfair, it says forgiveness recognizes that which we thought that was done to us, it has really not, in reality, it has not occurred. It didn't happen. Because what it's recognizing here is that which happens in a false world of dreams and separation, it's not real. It's like going to a movie. You watch a movie of something that someone else made up. You know it's not real. You know it's just an idea that someone wanted to use to entertain you. You know it's not real, but you go to the movie and you watch it and you get entertained. But once the movie is over, what do? You get up, leave your popcorn bag and your M&M bag. You leave your soda pop and everything there, and you walk out back into your world. You don't carry the movie back into your world. You don't see the movie as a reality. No, it was entertainment. You walk away. You're like, oh, this didn't really happen. It was just entertainment. Well, likewise, when you wake up, when you recognize the reality of your infinite, impersonal, and self-aware self, when you realize the truth of your oneness with God and each other and all humanity, and that this three-dimensional experience that we're having is only a temporary play with the ephemeral, that which is what? Illusion, that which is passing away. This world is just, it's just the passing of an idea, of an experience. It's not real. When you realize that it's not real, that everything in it, is not real. So what we thought happened to us is not real. What happens in dreams when you lay down at night? What happens in dreams when you wake up in the morning? You realize, oh, that was a dream. It's not real. Right? You let it go. Well, likewise, whatever happened to us and what we seemingly think is the real world, what we seemingly think that what happens to our body, what happens in our relationship, in our encounters and activities and our event, what you seem to happen in our day-to-day activity. Here, the Course says that forgiveness recognizes that what we thought was real, it won't real. What we thought was done to us, it really wasn't done to us. What was in the movie really wasn't real. What was in our dream really wasn't real. So here it's saying, when we understand reality, versus unreality. Then forgiveness recognizes that whatever happens in our day, whatever arises in my thought life, in our emotional life, in our psychological life, whatever happens in our encounters with one another during the day, whatever happened in the world, what happened in the market, whatever happened in the workplace, whatever happens in the entertainment community, whatever happens in the sporting community, whatever happened in the business community, whatever happened in politics or the arts or science, doesn't matter. Whatever happens in this transitory world, it says here that true forgiveness recognizes that it has not occurred really. And when you understand at that level, that is the mind of God. That's the mind of Christ. When you understand that, you realize that there's nothing that can happen that can undo what God did. There is nothing that can happen that can separate you from the love of God. There is nothing that anyone, not even yourself, can do to undo what God did. And what God did is he created himself as you and as me and called us children of the Most High, called us the I am, that I am. He called us the Christ, the sons of the living God, the daughters of the living God. That can't be undone. That's our reality. God is our only reality. Nothing in this world can substitute for the reality of who we are. And so when you understand at this level, when your mind has been transformed, when you have renewed your mind with the truth that is true always, forgiveness is so simple, so easy. You wouldn't want to live without it. Why? Because to live without forgiveness is to make a decision to live in pain and suffering, to live in sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. That's where it hangs out, in unforgiveness. And what hangs out in forgiveness is our innocence, our wholeness, our true perception. That's what hangs out with forgiveness. And forgiveness is only a concept or an idea that God uses here in the dream to wake us up. But there's no need for forgiveness in heaven because there's nothing to forgive. But God wants you to understand that heaven and earth have become one. So here, there's nothing to forgive. So there's no need to forgive your brother. He has done anything. He was crying out for love. If anything, in their acts, we realize that people do these things because they don't know who they are. And so they act out in these insane ways. It's their way of crying out that love is absent. I don't see love. I don't feel love. I feel like I'm separated from love. I'm separated from my true self. And it will eventually, move us to do things that are so unloving. But when we realize that they're doing it in a dream world, that nothing really occurs. And so what? Forgiveness recognizes what you thought your brother did, or your sister did, or the government did, or anyone did. To you, it really hasn't occurred. And so I release that. I will not engage in the trickery, in the deception of holding a grievance against anyone or anything. It says that forgiveness does not pardon. It does not pardon as though something really happened. In our world, people get a pardon because they done something. But in the world here, in the idea of this Jesus brand of forgiveness, it does not pardon sins. Why? Because it realizes that nothing occurred. It also realizes sin doesn't exist. It is part of the dream of separation. It's part of the man-made idea to keep us in a place of imprisonment in our own minds where we feel guilty about doing something wrong. and we fear the punishment that is to come. All that is happening in a mind that believes that it has torn itself apart from its maker. And that's impossible. It does not pardon sin and then make them real. So true forgiveness don't make the error real. It doesn't make the act real. It doesn't make this world real. Doesn't make anything outside of God real. It says true forgiveness. It says it does not make real. However, it sees that there is no sin. That sin is not a reality. That's what forgiveness sees. That's what forgiveness knows. Jesus branded forgiveness. Jesus never saw us as sinners. Jesus never saw us as separate from the Father. That's what we saw ourselves to be. That's what we fell in a trance and we felt in a hallucination state. And it started with Adam. When they thought God held back something from them. And so they said, God has held back something from us. And we're going to find it. And so when God showed up the next day, they had this idea in their mind that they have separated from God already. So when God said, Adam, where are you? Adam said, I was afraid. I was afraid. I'm afraid of you now, Father. Why? Because Adam took on another idea in his mind. He said, I'm afraid of you. God said, what? Who told you that? He said, I was afraid, so I hid myself. And that's what we have been doing. We have been hiding out in hatred and in fear and in sin consciousness and guilt when we haven't done anything. Remember, forgiveness recognized nothing had happened. God said, what are you talking about? He said, I hid from you, Father. Because you hid something from us. So they embraced the belief in separation. And in that moment, it created this entire world based on that lie, based on that fear, based on that consciousness of being separate. And then we come into it and get indoctrinated by it, only to what? Go on a search to find our true self. It's like a game. And so forgiveness sees there is no sin. And in that point of view, that there is no sin, that sin doesn't exist, it says, in that point of view are all of our perceived sins forgiven. If forgiveness sees that there is none, then that means all of ours are released, that we were holding ourselves. If there's no sin, what is we holding? We're holding on to an illusion, a belief system, a thought system of separation, guilt, and fear. We were holding on to an illusion, a shadow, a shadow that has been built up like a mountain and taught to all of us. No wonder the world is screwed up. The world now is seeing the light. The people are waking up every day and no longer being bamboozled by the lie and the belief in separation. No longer being bamboozled by a false identity, a body identity. It's the grand awakening that's happening right before your very eyes. He says, I see there is no sin. I see there was no sin. And in that point of view are all sin forgiven. Why? Because there is none. Why, why, why would you hold on to something that doesn't exist? It's all in the mind. And it was placed there strategically to keep you in prison, to keep you in bondage. How do you think 3% of humanity, or less than that, maybe 2%, owns 98% of all of the resources in the world? How do you think it got that way? This very way. Our belief in sin, which created a sense of guilt and a sense of fear. And that has been levied over us through so many means. And our eyes were blind to the reality. We took it hook, line, and sinker. That's how it happened. Do you think? And we look at it and we say, that ain't fair. Well, no, it's not necessarily that it ain't fair. It ain't real. And it's definitely not love. But they will sell you on this system in this way. This is the best way. No, it's not. The best way is equality. Because where there is no equality, there is no love. Where there is no equality, there is no peace, there's no joy, there's no happiness. Where there is equality, where there is no equality, it has to be a dream of unreality. So it's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. How long, O Son of God, as the last lessons, not the last lesson, but I was reading something. Say, that was the section on what it's saying. It says, how long, O Son of God, O daughter of God, how long will you wallow in this falsity? So, true forgiveness recognizes that nothing has occurred. Nothing in reality has occurred. Nothing offensive has occurred. Only in dreams. He says, in true forgiveness, it does not pardon and make the error real. It does not pardon sin, making it real. It says in true forgiveness, it sees there was no sin. And in that point of view are all your perceived sins forgiven. They've given up. You give them up. That's what forgiveness is. Giving up one idea for another. You give up that false idea that you have done something wrong for the real, true idea that you haven't done anything wrong. And so it says, what is sin? Then, in conclusion, if it says, if it's not real, say, well, what is it? And here it gives an explanation. If you really want to put a description on what it is, from forgiveness point of view, it says, what it is a false idea about you and about me and all humanity. That's what sin is. It's when we got a false idea about who we are. It's an identity problem. It's an identity crisis. So what humanity has suffered from all these years that have created the world that we now see is a identity crisis. I've always said it's been an identity crisis. We didn't know who we are. And so we didn't know who we are. We made up something that we thought God would like. And God is saying, what are you talking about? What I created can't be changed, can't be altered. Who you are. You remain as I created you. You are holy. You are sinless. You are guiltless. You are innocent. What are you talking about? He knows nothing about sin. He knows nothing about guilt or fear. Why? Because God is love and so are you. God is not asleep. And if when you wake up, neither are you. So the erroneous concept or idea of sin is nothing more than a false idea about who you are, who your brother is, who all humanity is. It is not what the world has defined as who we are, but we can only be defined by our source. God is our source. God is our very life. And God says that we are the holy children. We are the offsprings of his very own being, his very own nature, his very own essence. And that's changeless. That's unalterable. So sin doesn't exist in the mind of God. And what he's saying is it shouldn't exist in yours. Why? Because it's not real. It has nothing to do with an apple. It has nothing to do with a serpent. It has nothing to do with the story. It only has to do with what God is and what God has done. And God said he has blessed us. He has created us in his own image, and he has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenlies. And he goes on to say, through inspiration, that as God is, so are we in this world right now. And how is he? Sinless, guiltless, without fear. And so are we. So why are we holding on to it? Why are we seeing ourselves that way? It sounds ludicrous, doesn't it? It sounds absolutely incredible that we have done this to ourselves. So if we have done this to ourselves, guess what? The good news is we are the only one that can undo this falsity about ourselves. We can only one that can undo this self-image that we hold about ourselves that is not true. We can only one that can extricate ourselves from the world labeling us as something as we're not. We're the only ones, and that's the good news. So we're just a decision away. We're just a revelation away. We're just an insight away. Like the Course says, enlightenment is but a recognition. Just like forgiveness is but a recognition. Just like the truth is but a recognition. So we can shift our focus from the falsity to that which is real. And in a holy instant, everything changes. When we embrace the truth of who we are, you will feel, you will sense, you will know immediately in your being that you have been set free by the truth. And a lot of that falsity comes through religion. Well-meaning people calling you this and that and requiring you to do this and that. That's the same thing they did when Jesus was on the earth. Got to do all these things. And you still, after doing all these things, you wonder, why am I still feeling this way? Why am I still thinking this way? Why do I still have a consciousness that I'm not worthy? Why do I still have a consciousness that I'm separate, not only from God, but from humanity? I feel like I'm standing on an island by myself. I know about it. I've been down that path, and it's not a great feeling. And I laugh because it's comical to me now. And laughter does good like a medicine, as scripture says. Yeah, we have taken this idea serious. We've taken the idea of separation serious. We've taken the idea that we are this limited self, this limited being, that we are this body self. We've taken that real serious. In the neglect of reality, that in our reality we are formless and we are timeless beings. We are infinite beings. And this is just a play. This is just an experience a temporary experience that we're having. And when we understand that, we understand that we are free to express the love that we are. We're free to take this life, this opportunity, and like Jesus said, to be the light of the world. And so, what is real forgiveness? This is making sense to me. I remember the day that I said, "Oh my God, I've been doing this to myself. I've been making myself feel bad. I've been making myself think bad. I've been making myself perceive bad based on a false idea of myself." It said, because that is what, here it says, sin is merely a false idea about you and me. It's not true. I don't care where it comes from. If it's not what God has bestowed upon us in creation, then it's not you. Jesus said that God has crowned us with glory and honor. There's an honor that comes from God only, and we've all been crowned with that in creation. Before the world was, before there was any bodies, before there was any physicality, God crowned us with glory and honor. In fact, Paul said it in Ephesians chapter 1 when he said that before the foundation of the world, he said, you was already determined to be holy and without blame before God in love, before the foundation of the world. So when the world was founded, it can't change what God did. That is who we are, and we remain that way. And when we embrace that as our own reality, all of the insane thoughts and ideas, all of the imprisonment, all the psychological suffering and mental suffering that we see in the world, that we've experienced ourselves, it lifts from us. It's no longer a part of our identity. It's no longer a part of our self-image. We only embrace the truth that is true always. That's why Jesus asked his followers the question, who do you say that I am? He knew who he was. He wasn't asking them to tell him. He knew it. He was just seeing if they knew who they were. And when Peter said, you are the anointed one, you are the Christ, you are the I am, you are what God created before the world was. Jesus said, Peter, you did not get that information from humanity. Flesh and blood didn't provide you that insight, but you heard from the Father of all creation. Because yes, that is who I am. And in fact, eventually he said, Peter, that is who you are too. Because as I am, so are you in this world. How he is now, glorified, sanctified, ascended back into the oneness with the Father. He said, as I am, so are we in this world, so are you and me. We've been glorified, not now when we become because we recognize it, but we're glorified. We have been crowned with the honor that comes from God only. Back in eternity past, when God, in his one act of creation, created everything. Well, he only created the one thing, which was himself. And he called that self the I am. That I am. And that is who you are. You share in that I am. You're not separate and apart from that. Your being is not something separate from God, but you share the same being, the same life, the same self that God is. I and you and me, we're one. And this simple act of forgiveness is what put our mind back into alignment with the oneness that we all share. By recognizing that this whole idea of separation, this whole idea of sin, this whole idea of this world is a falsehood. It's not reality. The only thing real that's here is you and me. And when we wake up to that reality, Jesus told Nicodemus, look, you just need to be born again, man. You need to wake up. That's what he was saying. We hear the word to be born again. We hear the word to be enlightened. Enlightenment is but a recognition of what I'm talking about. We hear the word, the awakening. Awakening is no more than recognizing what is the truth. And now embracing the mind of Christ and seeing through the Christ mind. Jesus said the Christ mind thinks like this. He said, let this mind be in you that was also in me. He said it thinks like this. This is the one mind. This is the God mind. He said, being in the form of God. And when did he say this? Being in the form of God when he was a man. You are in the form of God, even though there's appearance that there is a humanity that you're associated with. You're still in the form of God because you remain as God created you. But Philippians says, being in the form of God, Jesus thought it not robbery to be equal with God. Why? Because he was. He said, this is the mind that you got to have. And so we should not think that we are some inferior being to God or to Jesus. No, we are to understand that if there's love, there has to be equality. So that he said, let this mind be in you, that you have equality with God and all humanity. I know that's a big idea, but it's the truth that sets you free. You've tried the other. You tried being this inferior being. You've tried being this little humble, sinner that the world labeled you as. And that only brought on more suffering, more pain, more guilt, more fear, more judgment. Why? Because it's a lie. It's not true truth. That is not who you are. But you have equality with the Creator. Why? Because the Creator created you as himself and out of himself. Do you think God's going to call himself a sinner or inferior? No. Where there is no equality, there is no love. Where there's no equality, there is no life. There's only pain and suffering. That's what this world is showing us. But when the world wake up, the pain, the suffering, the inferiority complex, the low self-esteem, the self-image of lack and scarcity and fear and dread and judgment, it would immediately disappear into thin air and back into the nothingness that it is, back into the ego nothingness that it is. It's just that simple. It sounds complicated, but it's simple. It says forgiveness merely sees the falsity. That's the recognition. We see the game that was played here. We see the deception. We see the error. We see the mistake, the mistaken perception. We see the upside down orientation that we've been given. We see it now. Okay. Forgiveness recognizes that. Forgiveness said, oh, I can see clearly now. The rain has gone. What is the rain? The falsity of who we are. That is the rain that has been pouring down on humanity from day one. But when the rain has been cleared, we can see clearly now that the rain has gone, that the belief in sin, guilt, and fear has been removed out of our psyche. all of the obstacles that was in my way, all of the blocks to the awareness of love present, that love is always present, that love is always shining and is always shining in you, in me, in all humanity. When we see this, when we are able to recognize this, it says forgiveness merely sees the falsity. It sees the error. It sees the mistake. And guess what? It doesn't see sin, because sin doesn't exist. But it sees the error and the mistake. And guess what? Errors and mistakes can be what? Can be corrected. Errors and mistakes can be corrected by what? By renewing the mind. Because all of this is happening in our minds. We think it's happening out there. We think it's happened in the past in history. We think it's going to be a certain way in the future. But no, it is happening in our minds. And so it's the mind that needs to be healed. This is a course in healing. This is a course in forgiveness. This is a course in awakening. This is a course. This is God's course. This is Jesus' course that he's given unto us to correct the error. This is a course in correction. And when the correction is made in your thinking, when the healing takes place in your mind, you begin to see through the eyes of Christ. You begin to see the face of Christ in all humanity. You begin to see love everywhere. You begin to see life everywhere. Versus that false perception of ourselves. We saw a demon everywhere, a devil everywhere, a hell everywhere. And we lived in fear. God has not given us the spirit of fear, but a power and a love and of a sound mind. All these are indicators that we have made an error or a mistake. So we go back to the point where the error or the mistake was made. We go to the source. We don't try to fix effects, but we go to the source. It's not about your behavior. It's not about what you've done. It's not about what you can do, because you can't do anything to undo what God did. But it's about you becoming aware where the error was made, and was made in our thinking. It was made when we embraced the idea of separation from God and from one another. And we correct the error. There is no separation. There is no sin. There is no consciousness of it. There is no guilt. If there's no sin, there's no guilt. If there's no guilt, there's no fear. It was all an illusion. And your mind immediately clears up. And you say, oh my God, I can see clearly now. I see love only. I see only love. Why? Because that is all that exists. It's everywhere. And so my life now teaches only love. That's what we do here on Truly Foundation. That's what we're doing here by using the Course in Miracles. We're teaching only love, because that is all there is. And love is what you are. Even scripture tells us everyone that is born of love is born of God, because what? God is love and God is light, and in God there is no darkness. So if there's no darkness in God, then there's no darkness in you. How did it get there? Self-deception, conditioning. How do we get it out? We get it out simply by letting it go. Because if it's an illusion, it doesn't exist. If it's a shadow, it's not real. We just let the thought go. We don't embrace it as our own anymore. Every credence, everything that we have given credence to that was antithetical, that is antithetical. And that only means that it is contrary to our true self. Every single idea and thought about yourself that was not true, you just let it go. It's just that simple. And when you let that thought go, what is left is the truth. What is left is what was always there. What is revealed is the real you that loves you, that was always present. What is revealed is the freedom that Jesus talked about. That the truth will set you free from the illusion of a self that you made. And now you realize that I and my Father are one. That is the truth. That when you've seen me, and I'm not talking about the body, but when you see the vibration and the expression of who I am, when you see the light that I walk in, you say, yeah, when you've seen me, you have seen the light of God. You have seen God. Jesus said it because it was true, and you can say it because it is true about you. And until you embrace that truth, you will continue to play around with the children's toys of sin, guilt, and fear, and suffering and pain and confusion. And God is not the author of confusion. We are in our false self. So that's what Paul meant when he says, we have been crucified. In other words, we have let go the false self. We just let it go. We have let go of the false self. We have been crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, we live. Not I, not the false self, but Christ. And so who we show up as now is the Christ, because that's who we are. It said now the life that we live in the flesh, we live by the confidence that we are the sons and the daughters of God, who gave everything to us in creation. I'm teaching the course out of the Bible now. I can do that because I only see love now in the Bible. I look past the ego in the Bible. I look past the falsity, and I only see the light that is there. I only see the revelation that has come through. Forgiveness merely sees its falsity and therefore lets it go. You just let it go. What then is free to take its place is now the will of God. What is free to take the place of falsity, this false self that we have put so much credence in, is the will of God. What is the will of God? The will of God is for all of us to come into the knowing of ourselves, to come into the knowledge of the truth. That's the will of God. Why? Because when we come into the knowledge of the truth, there is but one will. Our Father, which art in heaven, holy is your name. And that holy name is my holy name too. Thy kingdom has come. Your truth has come. Your will is being done. Where? On earth, in you and me, as it is in heaven. Heaven and earth has become one when you wake up to the truth. It's not something that's going to happen in the future. It happens in the moment, in the twinkling of an eye, when you wake up to this reality of your oneness with God and with all humanity. You have given us this day our daily bread, our daily revelation of who we are. Forgive us our illusions about ourselves. That's what he said. That's what a trespass is. Forgive us our illusions. I'm excited. My wife come in and said, "You excited? You woke me up. This excites me. This thrills me. This is like euphoria." What is euphoria? Intense excitement and happiness. The truth sets you free like this. And you can't give it away until you recognize it in yourself. So forgive us our illusions as we forgive others their illusions. We all play the illusional game. He said, but we forgive all that. We let it go. Lead us. Thank you for leading us. And thank you for not leading us and tempting us, because love does not lead or tempt. It does not do that. God would never tempt you, test you, or lead you like they say. God's going to test you. No, God doesn't do that. Love doesn't do that. All these are man-made ideas, religious ideas. For you are the kingdom and the power and the glory. It all comes from the one source that we are part of. And also, all that's in just the one Lord's Prayer. But if you take the belief in separation to any spiritual writing, and if you read it through the perception of separation, that we're separate from God and one another, that we're not one, then only thing you're going to get out of it is sin consciousness, guilt, and fear at some level. But when you take a renewed mind, a mind that's been transformed, a mind that no longer conforms to this world, but is transformed by the renewing of the mind, when you take that mind, the mind of Christ, and let that be your what? Now, let that be your filter. Let that be your perception. You can only see love everywhere, because there is only love everywhere. You look through the falsity. You're no longer in fear. You're no longer in guilt. You're no longer in judgment. You don't even judge yourself anymore, let alone someone else. Why? Because we understand you're either awake or you're not. And if you're not awake, you're crying out for love. By your acts, you're crying out for love. And so we're not to judge that. That was us at one time. No, they're crying out for love. And so we become what? We become the forgivers. We become the healers. We become the restorers of the breach, the brokenhearted, those that are in fear. We become the symbol of love to them. That's what your life becomes. That's the will of God. And I'm going to finish on this note on this, and then I will be finished with this forgiveness thing. But this is important. This is not the forgiveness. This is the forgiveness that Jesus walked in. This is the forgiveness that the Course is saying. This is what true forgiveness is. It's not this penny anything where we think, I'm going to let them go. They did it. Now, all that stuff. I love them, but I don't, all that don't get you anywhere. You end up suffering with that mentality. It says unforgiveness does many things. It takes frantic action. It pursues goals and it twists and overturns and distorts in its furious attempt to smash reality. That's what an unforgiving thought would do. All that. It does many things. It will drive you crazy. An unforgiving thought acted on, it will drive you crazy. It says, however, on the other hand, forgiveness, on the other hand, is still. Forgiveness is still. It doesn't react. It's still. Regardless of what happens in the world. It says the first response to forgiveness is that forgiveness is still. It sits very still. It pauses. It sits still. It says it is still and it quietly does nothing. When you know who you are, you don't react at everything that's going on in the world. Everything that's going on the level of form, because you realize that it is not the real deal. It's temporary. In many cases, if we would just wait 24 hours, before we respond or react to something. In many cases, it doesn't even exist in 24 hours. It's in change. Why? We're in this world of perception, this world that comes and goes, this world that changes in every moment. And it's changing because it's not real. In heaven, there is no change. It's only reality. That's why there's peace in heaven. This world, there's so much coming and going and up and down and in and out. You get dizzy. And that's why there's unrest, uncertainty, always coming from everywhere into us. All this information. It said, so it is still and it quietly does nothing. It offends no aspect of reality. True forgiveness doesn't. It doesn't try to change reality. It offends. It has no offense to give. Why? Because it knows what? That is not real. Sin doesn't exist. I and the Father are one. There's nothing but love. There's nothing but shared love. There's nothing but shared interest. God's greatest interest in me is my happiness, my joy, and my peace. So there's no worries, man, as they say. It said it offends no aspect of reality, nor does it seek to twist it to appearances that it like. In other words, we are no longer conformed to what the world say we should do, we should be. We don't accept the fears. We don't accept the phobias. We don't accept the traditions that only leads to fear. This whole world is built on the idea of fear and separation. Our motivation is not the ideas that come from this world. Our motivation is love only. Love, beauty only. Because that's just who we are. It says, forgiveness doesn't do those things. It said, but what forgiveness does do is that it merely looks and waits and judges not. Why? Why would you judge an illusion? Why would you judge a falsity? That's insanity. It said it looks and it waits and it judges not. That's what forgiveness does. When we think our brother or our sister has done something to us, what does it say here? Oh, if we think the government has done something, or politics has done something, or the business community, or the arts, or the science, or sports, or whatever, when we think that something's been done to hurt us, it said we pause, we wait, we merely look, we observe, we wait, and we judge not. Why? Because our judgment is going to be what? In vain, and it's going to be off. How can you judge an illusion? How can you judge a shadow? Would you look at the shadow of yourself and say, that's me? That is not you. It's a shadow. It says, he or she who would not forgive must judge. When we hold on to unforgiveness, we must judge. Why? Because we're in fear. Why? Because we are guilt written in our minds. There's a consciousness of sin when we hold on to an unforgiving thought. It says, he that would not let it go must judge. So when you hold on to an unforgiving thought, when you hold on to falsity to try to make it real, it says you must judge. And Jesus told us, do not judge, because the same measure you judge with is going to be what? Measured back to you. So when we call somebody something that they're not, when we say things about people that is not what God created, what we're saying is we're saying it to ourselves. It's being measured back to us. And that's why we feel bad. We think we're telling somebody off, and all we're doing is imprisoning ourselves with the idea of what we're telling other people, because there's only one of us. The universe knows only one. But if you're thinking on the level of bodies, that there's 8 billion bodies in reality, you will project it on others, not knowing you're projecting it on your very self. So it is time to release all judgments. That's why Jesus said, judge not. You don't know what you're doing, man, to yourself. He said, judge not. He says, he who would not forgive must judge, for he must justify his own illusions, his own fear, his own guilt, his own sin consciousness. And that's what happened with sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. We seek to get it out of our mind by projecting it on others. And we don't realize that to what we project on another, we're only projecting on ourselves, because there's only one of us. We're the one same self. Wonder why you feel so bad after you've given someone a piece of your mind? Because you've given it to yourself. Your brother is yourself. There is no separation. There is no 8 million bodies. There's only one being. It's the I am, and that's the one being that we all share. So you see the anathema that we have done to ourselves. We have crucified ourselves again and again and again and again and again. Every time we judge, we're crucifying ourselves. But the moment we let it go and say, what I thought that was done into me, it didn't occur. It was only an illusion. Then we set ourselves free. But he who would forgive himself, notice now, for he who, it's not about you forgiving someone else. It's about you forgiving yourself, because when you forgive someone else, when you let go, when you release someone else, you are releasing your very own self. As I said from the beginning of this message, it's all about you and knowing and coming to know the you, the real you that is love. When you come to know the real you that is love, you release all other false ideas, all illusions about yourself. You release all humanity. You release all humanity. You become the savior of the world. Like Jesus. You become the savior of the world when you release humanity, when you release yourself, when you release this world for thinking this world was something that it was not. You set yourself free. You are your own savior. That's what God was trying to get us to understand. That we are our own savior. When you wake up, all humanity wakes up. When you let yourself free, all humanity is set free by your release, by your forgiveness. All, no exception. If there's one exception, it's not true forgiveness. If there's one exception, it's not true love. That's why Jesus said what? He left the 99 to go get what? The one. Why? Because without the one, we're not complete. So how dare we try to send somebody to hell that doesn't even exist? We're sending ourselves to hell when we do that in that moment, because there is no hell, just like there is no sin. And there is no enemy. There's only the inner me that needs to be discovered. There is no enemy out to get you. There's no devil out after you. These are all part of the falsity that we have tried to make reality. This is all part of the fear that we have engaged ourselves in. Don't you feel lighter already? Don't you feel freer already? But he who would forgive himself must learn to welcome truth exactly as it is. How is truth? The same way it's been from day one. I'm the Lord God. I change not. I am truth. I am reality. I change not. What I create is just like me. What I create is me. So there's only me. So there's God and there's nothing else. And because you exist, because you are conscious, because you're aware, your consciousness and your awareness must be God's. And it is. It's not you don't have a separate conscience. You don't have a separate awareness, but it's the one awareness that we all share. It's the one life that we all share. The one blood, the one breath that we all share. And so now I can finish my lesson. Back to lesson 249. Okay. And we can run through this very quickly now because you're going to understand it. Now that you understand what true forgiveness is and that you have let it all go. Now it says, forgiveness ends all suffering and loss. Now you see why. It ends all suffering because unforgiveness is the source of suffering and loss. All the suffering and loss in your life has come through the embracing of unforgiveness, holding on to a falsehood. That's where it came from. When you pick up one end of the stick, you pick up the other. On one end of the stick is unforgiveness. On the other end of the stick is suffering and loss and scarcity and pain and anxiety and fear and guilt and sin consciousness. It's on the other side of the stick. You pick one end up, you pick the other. But when you pick up the stick of forgiveness, what's on the other side is only love. And there's no fear in love. There's no suffering. There's no pain in love. There's only oneness. And so forgiveness ends all suffering and loss. It says, forgiveness paints a picture of a world where suffering is over. That's why you see it now through the eyes of Christ. You see it through the eyes of love. And it paints a picture of a world where suffering is over, where loss becomes impossible. That's what Jesus meant. All that you've given to me, I've lost none. When you realize and you walk in this love that you are, you understand that you can't lose anything. You can't lose nothing. Why? Because you are part of the source of everything. Even in scripture, it says that God, that we, all things are ours. We are not without anything. Forgiveness paints a picture of a world which anger makes no sense. Now anger makes no sense to the awakened, to the enlightened. Anger makes absolutely no sense. Why are you angry at an illusion, at a falsehood? Forgiveness paints a picture of a world where attack is gone. I'll be crazy to attack someone. I might as well attack myself now that I understand that all of us are the one self. It paints a picture of a world where madness has an end. Forgiveness ends all madness. Because forgiveness ends all belief in sin, consciousness, guilt, and fear. Unforgiveness have created a world of madness, and we see it on display, full display, and wonder what in the world is going on. What is in the mind of people? Falsehood, self-deception. What Jesus said, be not deceived. God is not mocked. If you hold on to unforgiveness, you will get what's on the other side of the stick. Not you, the real you, but this false self that you've made. It says, what suffering is now conceivable in forgiveness. There is no suffering. There is no pain. Why? There's only love. Your whole mind has changed. You have gone into every locked away cell in your mind that you've been holding these ideas, and you have released them. And what is left to take their place is the will of God, the mind of God, the mind of Christ. What loss can be sustained in a forgiven world? The world becomes a place of joy, abundance, charity, and endless giving. That is your life now. An endless place of joy and abundance and charity and endless giving. That's what the light looks like. It is now so like to heaven that it quickly is transformed into the light that it reflects. You are the light of the world. And you show up in the world as joy and abundance and charity and endless giving. That's how Jesus showed up. He was in joy all the time, regardless of what was going on. We no longer dance to the flux and flow of politics. We no longer dance to the flux and flow of this greedy corporate world. We no longer dance to the flux and flow of what we see happening and what we call celebrities, what we see happening in sports and arts and science, where their lives end up in a wreck. That is not the example. That is not the model. But the model is a life that is filled with joy and abundance and charity and endless giving. And so the journey which we began has ended in the light from which it came. We now, having started that journey and have awakened in the journey and on the journey, we have become the light from which we came. What is that light? God is light. We have become one with that light from which we came. We did not come from our mommy and daddy's creation, but we came from the creation of God, which is light. Our parents only gave us a body, a temporary body, but God has given us eternal life. What is our allegiance to? Your born natural self? No, your allegiance is to what God created, that remained as it was created. That's what our allegiance to. And so therefore, you are the Holy One of God. You are the innocent one. You are the infinite one. You are the impersonal one. You're not one separated self, but you are the you're the impersonal self where you share the one life with God and with all humanity and all living things. You are the light of the world. And so we're going to end today's lesson with this declaration, as it says here in lesson 249. Are you feeling this? I'm feeling this. Father, we would return our minds to you. We return the mind that we made. We return that to you. We have betrayed them. We're a betrayer of the mind that you gave to us that was pure and clean and whole. We betrayed it by embracing a falsity about ourselves. And we held these minds in a vice of bitterness and frightened them with thoughts of violence and death. We was doing this all to ourselves. But now, like the Bible says, now faith is. Now, all that was a dream, all that was a hallucination, all that was vain imaginings, all that was a fantasy that we played with. But now, in this holy instant, in this moment, would we rest again in you? We returning home, man. The prodigal son has come home. The prodigal daughter has come home. Because that was a nightmare that we dreamed where we ended up in the pig pen. But we have awakened and we have come to ourselves and we come home to rest again in you. And we rest as we were created. We rest as you created us, where all illusions are dispelled. All illusions are disappeared. We have no past. There is no future. There's only this present moment where there's fullness of joy and what pleasures forevermore. And we stay in the presence. We abide in the presence because there's only the presence. Love is always present. Love is always shining in us and through us to be the saviors of all humanity. Your life has deep meaning and good purpose when you wake up. Feel into that. Feel into your reality because it is who you are. You are love. The real you loves you. Why? Because you are love. The real you is love. And never, ever try to substitute that reality. And you'll never suffer. You'll never be in pain. You'll never be in fear or in anxiety. Now that the mind has been renewed. This is a course in renewing the mind. This is what the miracle is. It is the shift in our perception. The mind is what needs healing. Nothing else needs healing but the mind. Once the mind is healed, like it says, Jesus said that what? When you embrace oneness, when you embrace the single eye, he said that what? All of your body, everything will be filled with light. This is not something that happens after the laying down of the body. No, it happens instantly in this moment, right now. So all suffering has ended and all loss has ended when we let go, when we forgive. When we forgive, give up one perception of ourselves, which is false, for another, which is true, and true always. Thank you so much for being with us today. We here at Truly Live, we are dedicated to the sharing of advanced spirituality. And we're here for you. Someone was here for me. I'm here for you. And it thrills my heart Until tomorrow, Workbook lesson 250. We're on our way to 365. We've been at this for over lesson 250. So we've probably done 50 experts. So we've been on this journey for 300 days. We started back on January 10th. And we're just beginning. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next.